What's up, everybody? Michael Hay, Grower here. Wanted to make an upload addressing a couple of questions that I've had people asking me about the current state of medical cannabis and what holds for the future of medical cannabis in Washington State. If you're not aware, and if you live in Washington, I hope you're aware, that right now we're kind of on the edge of some major changes to medical cannabis around here. And right now, I wanted to go over this article from SeattlePI.com that kind of goes over what changes are likely to be taking place. And just to clarify on that, right now the bill passed the House and is going to be going to the governor's desk to for him to sign. And it's been predicted that he's going to sign it. I believe he even said that he's going to sign it, though he does have the ability to make line item veto changes, essentially. So basically that means that he can make minor amendments or kind of ixnay some of the amendments or aspects to the bill. So anyways, we'll go over this article and what exactly is most likely to be taking place, and then I'll kind of give my thoughts on it and yeah, go from there. So the article starts out with excuse me. The article starts out with good, bad, or indifferent. However you felt about the proliferation of those green crosses around the state, especially in its urban centers, they're going away. The Washington State Legislature just passed the medical marijuana overhaul bill, sending it to the governor's pen. And then it says in parentheses, Governor Jay Inslee will likely sign it, though he might still strike out a thing or two since he can line item veto. We'll hear more about his intentions soon. Moving on, it says, Inslee has been working closely with those working on the bill, said spokesperson Jamie Smith. Inslee has clearly been in favor of new regulations on the medical marijuana market. But, she said, it's too early to know what he will do. The governor is happy they were able to reach agreement on legislation and will take a closer look at it. If tweaks are needed, she said, the governor can use the line item veto to make changes. Inslee has a media availability event scheduled for tomorrow, Wednesday at 10:30. Check out TVW for details. But today is now Friday, actually, April 17th, and from what I understand, he didn't respond to, or maybe he just didn't have that media availability, because I haven't been able to find out anything on it. And if I'm wrong there, if he actually has already signed it, please somebody let me know, but I haven't, from the little bit of digging I've done. This article seems to actually be the latest on it. So moving on in the article, says the punchline is that collective gardens are gone, or nearly so. They've been all but eliminated by the new bill, which was started by Republican Senator Ann Rivers. It was Senate Bill 5052. And the article says, will they go quietly? Will they move into the black market? Will cities use the new law in a run of new arrests? Will the new law prop up the state's recreational marijuana system? That's one question we can answer now, and that is yes. Well, everyone has until July 2016 to figure it out. Some will go into the recreational system regulated by the Liquor Control Board, which will now be called the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board. And others will, question mark. And then basically what they're saying is that current collectives that are registered or licensed with the state as a business and who have been paying their taxes will actually get first dibs on a license to actually transform their current shop into a recreational shop. And they'll allow them to have like a, what was the term they used? I think they're going to allow them to have like a, they're going to be like branded as like a medical specialty recreational supplier. But anyways, what is really happening is the fact that the state realizes that with all of the medical cannabis dispensaries around, that it's kind of creating a squeeze on the recreational shops. So it all boils down to lost tax revenue, essentially. And with that, what they're trying to do is pretty much abolish collective gardens or caregivers, lower the amounts down to very low amounts from where they are now. Right now the amounts are £1.5 pounds of processed cannabis and 15 plants per patient. And as a collective or a caregiver, with 2 patients and a recommendation of their own, you can have up to 4.5 pounds and 45 plants. And what they're trying to lower it down to is 3 ounces of processed cannabis and 6 plants at home. And that's if you are willing to be registered into a state registry, just the same way that Oregon has done in the past. So essentially the state would know exactly who you are and where you are growing cannabis. Now they did create a minor amendment that says that if you do not want to be in the database, that you can, and if you're a qualified patient, that you can actually grow up to 4 plants at home, but you will only be allowed to possess the standard recreational limit for processed cannabis, which is 1 ounce. And that's, like I said, if you don't want to be a part of the registry. And then also, they want to make it so that collective gardens can still exist, though they have to be registered with the state as a part of that state registry, and has to be like a mile away from the closest retail shop or something like that. And it would actually make it so that they could possess up to 60 plants, although I don't think it's been clarified how much the limit of processed cannabis is. So, I mean, with that being said, it's going to make some major changes. And, you know, I think if anybody says that they didn't see this coming, you're pretty much fucking delusional. The current state of medical cannabis, as it has been for the last few years, it really has been kind of quite different from other medical cannabis states' laws. You know, California has kind of been an animal in its own, and Washington has kind of been like, you know, California's little brother, essentially, as far as the medical marijuana industry goes. And, you know, I think really what's caused this is, you know, it was like 4 or 5 years ago, or maybe even more, that they actually outlined, you know, what the limits really were for medical cannabis and with collectives and everything. And at that point is when you saw just a massive amount of dispensaries springing up out of nowhere, a massive amount of people picking up growing cannabis, grow shops popping up on every corner. And obviously what has ended up happening is it's created what we call this gray market. It's kind of like a little inside joke, essentially, to where it's kind of between the black market and the recreational market. And obviously, you know, that couldn't go on forever. I mean, it's been a fucking blast, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of enjoy the way that the medical cannabis industry is right now. But with that being said, from a logical standpoint, you know, it's not surprising that something like this was going to happen. And, you know, my particular thoughts on it, well, I'll actually kind of tell a little bit of a story that happened a few weeks ago. I actually was contacted by one of the dispensaries that I work with periodically, and they wanted me to bring down some flowers for them. And I met with the actual owner of the dispensary, and she just kind of nonchalantly asked me if I heard what had been going on with the state and the Senate bill and everything like that. And I didn't really speak my mind too much on it. I mean, usually I'm somewhat of a opinionated motherfucker, but I really didn't even elaborate on it too much. I just said, yeah, whatever, you know, it sucks, blah, blah, blah. And you could see she just got this angry look in her eyes, and she says, I hope they do away with it. I hope they get rid of medical cannabis because it's fucking cramping on my competition. And the reason why she says that is because not only does she own a dispensary, but she also owns a string of recreational shops. So, you know, that kind of outlines the greed that you see within the cannabis industry as a whole. You know, prior to being able to have a recreational shop, she had a couple of dispensaries. And, you know, for her, it was never about helping people. It was never about providing clean, quality cannabis. You know, it was never about, you know, a non-profit organization, as you say. I mean, as soon as she gets the recreational shop, all of a sudden her attitude completely changes. And she's been operating both recreational shops and medical shops basically to maximize her profit. And I mean, that's what's wrong with this whole industry, you know what I mean? You know, in my actual thoughts on her, like I said, first off, you can't say that you didn't see this coming. So regardless of what actually happens and gets set in stone with what the governor decides to do, I think it's safe to say that medical cannabis, as we know it in Washington, is pretty much done. You know, you could say that people could sign up to do the collective gardens to be registered with the state and everything like that, but I don't know. It's hard to say exactly what will happen. You know, and more of my thoughts on it are that, you know, I don't grow cannabis for a living. You know, I have my own legitimate business outside of the cannabis industry. I mean, even if cannabis was only worth $5 a pound, I would still do the same exact thing that I'm doing now. I mean, I do it, you know, 99.9% out of passion and to provide meds for patients. I mean, me first and foremost, I'm a patient myself. Marijuana has, actually I hate calling it marijuana, cannabis has, I mean, changed my life a long time ago, to the point to where I barely even remember a time before I smoked cannabis. And not only has it helped me with chronic pain related to bad knees and a bad back, but, you know, insomnia, I have stomach problems. I mean, realistically, I'm a pretty healthy dude at the end of the day, but the relief that cannabis brings me, you know, on a more, well, let's put it this way: the relief that cannabis brings me, I can't see life without it. You know, and of course, I love getting baked. I love smoking cannabis. I love dabbing oil. I mean, it's for a recreational and a medical thing for me. You know, and my thoughts on legalization and everything like that, I've kind of always just wanted it to more or less be like a mass decriminalization of cannabis. Although, you know, with the way that our government works, you can't say that even if cannabis was decriminalized to the point to where they were no longer putting people in jail for it, you know, they're going to tax it. Either they're going to be making money off of throwing people in prison, or they're going to be making money off of taxing cannabis. And that's inevitable, in my opinion. And I think it's disappointing. But when you have, and you know, and it just kind of goes to show what the public opinion really is on cannabis. I mean, if so many people didn't like it, if so many people didn't want cannabis, whether it's for recreational or medical use, you know, we wouldn't have this massive, you know, prison industry, and we wouldn't have this, we wouldn't have the states even looking to legalize it. I mean, it would just be another, you know, another unheard of drug that and you can't even say that, because it's not even comparable to any other drug. And in my opinion, drug is only a technical term. You know what I mean? But at any rate, you know, what I'm going to do if this happens, well, first and foremost, I will probably enjoy my other year of being able to freely do what I do now. And then after that, you know, I don't know. Once July 2016 hits, and you know, and that's assuming that this thing actually gets set in stone. And I have to stress the fact that at this point in time, from what I understand, the governor has not signed it, although he's likely to, so we can just, you know, we can speak basing on that assumption that he's going to. And you know, it sucks at the end of the day. And I can't say that I can see myself getting into the recreational industry at you know, anytime in the near future. You know, I would like to if it were easily possible. And I've actually had a number of people contact me asking me if I would be interested in getting in on the recreational aspect, because there's a lot of people out there that want to bankroll a legitimate recreational cannabis operation. And personally, I can't technically be involved in it because they don't want to allow anybody who's committed a felony within the last 10 years. And unfortunately, I'm a felon because of cannabis, as ironic as that is. I mean, it's fucking outrageous. But that 10-year time limit actually is going to be passing for me sometime soon. And I haven't taken anybody up on their offers to be involved. And even after I've told people that I'm a felon and I can't be involved in the recreational industry, they still ask me if I'd be interested in being like a silent partner of sorts, more as like a consultation sort of thing. One thing that I actually do hope to kind of plan on getting involved in, which I probably should have gotten into more at this point, is using my heating and air conditioning and refrigeration experience and business to kind of gear towards you know, the recreational cannabis industry, because obviously HVAC guys are in high demand when it comes to growing cannabis. So that's going to be one thing I'm gonna kind of be focusing on. You know, and like I've stressed, cannabis isn't my main source of income. So, you know, it's not like it's the end of the world for me. Although I'm not stoked on the changes, to say the least bit. And that's, you know, without really going into the fact that this will actually be affecting people that really need cannabis, you know, to terminally ill patients that can't grow their own and that don't have the money to go buy cannabis. And, you know, they're supposedly going to be having these tax breaks and this and that. But, you know, at the end of the day, and I'll just say it, the current state of the recreational cannabis industry is a clusterfuck in Washington, and that's the only way I can describe it. I mean, realistically, it's a fucking joke. A large portion of the people that are involved in it are people that simply had the legitimate funds that wanted to jump in on this opportunity, and a lot of the product that's out there right now is shit. I actually have a couple of friends that work in a couple of the recreation shops, and I've seen, I mean, more often than not, the product that they have in there is mediocre at best. You know, they have some decent herb, but at any rate, it's $35 a gram. So, you know, and if I were to forecast the future, what's going to happen, assuming that every part of this bill gets signed by the governor, it's probably going to cause another proliferation of the black market. You know, you're going to have all of these dispensaries shutting down, some of which will get involved into the recreational aspect of the industry, but you're going to have a lot of people that stop growing because of it, because they don't want to risk themselves with any legal trouble or being involved in a registry and things like that, and obviously with the severely lowered limits. So it's almost going to go back to where it was pre you know, medical cannabis in Washington, which is far, far different than it is now. And I think you're going to get a lot of people that probably will go buy cannabis from the dispensary or from the recreational shops. But with the current guidelines of I-502, I can't see the prices of the cannabis getting to the point to where it's reasonable. So you're going to have people that are still going to be growing cannabis at the same scale that they were, if not a larger scale, as if it were completely illegal, and selling it for half the price on the streets. I mean, that's inevitable. That's what's going to happen. And I'm not going to say that I have all of the answers as to what they could do to, you know, kind of bring this all together, you know, and bring an equilibrium to between the black market and the recreational market. You know, the gray market, as we call it, with medical cannabis was kind of what was kind of keeping everything in the balance, because dispensaries were still paying their taxes, so the state's still getting sales tax anyways, and that's kind of steered away from the black market to some degree. So, you know, it's kind of interesting, and I think it's kind of a unique situation. I think, you know, many years from now, it's going to be looked back upon, and I think a lot of states moving forward that end up with legalization, you know, we'll look at, you know, what Colorado has done, what Washington has done, the mistakes that either state has made, which Washington, in my opinion, has made far more mistakes, and kind of use it as a model. And, you know, just to clarify another thing, you know, I don't disagree with legalization by any means. I really don't. You know, and I would probably be involved with the recreational industry here if it were more logical for me to do, but at this point it's just simply not. But as a whole, I agree with legalization. It's far better than the alternative. Nobody should be going to prison or jail for cannabis. I mean, it's fucking preposterous to think that people should actually be locked in a fucking cage for cannabis. It's absolutely fucking outrageous. So I hope that it's legalized on a federal level, but I just hope that in the process that it's not exploited to the degree that some people think it would be, you know, with major corporations and everything like that. But unfortunately, just with the American greed that you see, I mean, it's like greed is the American dream. It really is. And that's the biggest downside to cannabis becoming legalized, because it will be fully exploited. And I think a lot of these things are inevitable to some degree. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. You know, and just to clarify also, I'm not going to hate directly on anybody who is involved in I-502. I just hope that if you are, you're doing the right thing. You know, a lot of the stress on I-502 is the fact that people will have access to clean cannabis. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bag, but I can personally vouch that all of the cannabis is not fully tested and screened for microbials and pesticides. That's a big fucking lie. So yeah, you know, just I hope that anybody who is involved in I-502 kind of takes a look at it from a different perspective than straight greed. You know, I think you need more people, and not to boast, but you need more people like myself that are into cannabis primarily as a passion and with income as a second. And you know, there has to be a balance between the two. But yeah, I just don't want to see everything go completely downhill, and I don't think it completely will. And like I said at the beginning, we just have to conform, essentially. And yeah, I hope in the future that everything gets ironed out. I hope that all of the patients out there that are terminally ill or severely ill will still have easy access to cannabis. And yeah, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And you know, on a side note, if in a very unlikely move, if in a couple of years our government ends up having a Republican president, who knows? I mean, I don't think that's going to happen personally, but if that does end up being the case, I mean, he could fucking squash the whole thing. So yeah, it'll be kind of interesting to see. So those are my thoughts on it. I hope this video might enlighten some people onto what's happening with medical cannabis right now. And just like I said, you know, there's a lot of people out there right now that think that the fucking world is coming to an end. And you know, and like I said, it's not set in stone at this point. It's likely to be, but don't jump the gun. And in the meantime, I mean, if you don't agree with what's happening, you could actually email or write Governor Inslee and tell him not to sign the thing. I mean, there's a very good possibility it's going to be happening, but at any rate, you could do your part and stop the fucking greed. Hopefully, I hope everybody out there involved in the recreational industry kind of wakes up a little bit. But until then, yeah, that's pretty much it. And look for the next upload. Appreciate everybody watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Add me on Instagram, username MichaelHadeGrower. Until then, peace out.